Hello, I'm here today with Anna from Russia with Books, and today we're going to be talking about Dracula, both the book and doing a little bit of movie comparison as well. I read Dracula for the first time, and Anna, this was a reread for you, right?
Yeah, it was actually my third read for Dracula. Yes.
Okay. And how about the movies? Because we watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, so Francis Ford Coppola,
Yeah.
1992. That was my first time watching that, and it was my first time watching Nosferatu, the 2024 version, is what I watched.
No, with Dracula by Coppola, I think I watched it at least 10 times in the past, literally. I actually really like that movie. Even though, yeah, we'll be discussing it. It's nothing like the book, in my opinion. But yes, I love the movie. And I watched Nosferatu when it was released. I'm not sure, it was about a year ago or something like that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
watched it, yeah, in a cinema when it was released. And I was literally watching like half of the movie like that because I'm a scaredy cat. And there are some moments like a bit like, I'm not sure jump scary, but like the tension of it. And it was
yeah,
like literally like watching like that.
yeah. For me, I think we'll talk more about the movies. I think
Yeah.
after we talk about the book, but for me, it was pretty. I liked it because Dracula is pretty gross and repulsive in that one. Yeah, but it was first time for everything reading and watching for me. And I think so that gets a little bit into like why we did this project. I watched Sinners earlier this year, and so like one, I was already like, I like vampires, but I feel like I haven't read or watched any vampire fiction. Why is that? And so I was primed to like do this little project, and then you had recommended that I read Dracula.
I think
Um,
for your bingo video
yes,
because you had the
yes,
prompt with the epistolary genre. That,
yes.
yes, that's when it happened.
Yeah, so I'm doing the 2025 R Fantasy Book Bingo, and one of the prompts, one of the squares on the bingo board is epistolary, and it's like hard mode if it's entirely in an epistolary format. And it was like, Dracula, you gotta do it. So that's kind of why we decided to do this buddy read.
Yeah. I
All
just
right.
wanted to be honest, in my case, I just wanted to refresh my memories, even though it's like my third read. But the secret, first two times when I read it, it was long time ago when I was still at school and it was in Russia. So memories are very hazy. And plus, I watched the Coppola's movie about 10 times after that. So it's like you get the movie and the book all mixed up. You're not sure like what's the reality.
Yeah, and I'm glad I waited to watch the movies until after I had read the book because I can definitely see how like the images from the movie might like override
Yeah.
your memory of
That will
the
happen to me, yes.
book. I feel like Dracula, the icon, the figure is pretty well known, but I
Yeah,
actually
but that's the
didn't
thing.
really,
I think
I
like
didn't really understand what the plot was. Like, I had no idea what I was getting into when I opened the book, really. So I don't
no,
know.
I
Do
think
you?
I think like majority of people are sort of familiar with Dracula. But are they actually? Because for majority of people, I think they just actually watched the movie by Coppola, and that's their view of Dracula because the movie is so famous and it's been around for like such a long time. And I think people's impression of the story is actually based on the movie. And as we already, like Dani and I mentioned, that it's very, very different story from what is portrayed in the book. So if you want to actually familiarize yourself with an original story, we would actually recommend you the book, even though we have some gripes with it. We'll discuss.
Yeah,
But I think, like, yeah, like maybe Danny can say what the
yeah,
story is actually about. Try.
yeah. Um, so I interpreted this book as having like sort of three parts to it. I don't know if you read it similarly. So the first part is we have a solicitor, Jonathan Harker, is traveling from England to Romania. It's a business trip, and he is like acting as a real estate agent to sell Count Dracula uh some property in England. And so it's like very mundane sort of setup. But so that's sort of the first part is this like traveling to Dracula's castle and horror starts to happen in the castle. And in the second part, Dracula comes to England. And in England, we have Jonathan's fiance, Mina, Mina's friend, Lucy, and Lucy's three suitors. Second part, Dracula comes to England, terrorizes England. And in the third part, there's a quest to hunt down Dracula.
Dracula in general, on the surface of it, is actually a very fun story. Um, I think it's very original in the way it's been written. That's why I think it was so unusual, and probably that was maybe the reason, one of the reasons why it was so popular at the time, and it's still very popular because it's so unusual.
Yeah.
But we did have some issues with the execution, which sounds like blasphemy, honestly, because there is so much praise of these books online. If you like check the reviews of Dracula, everyone is like, oh, it's classics, it's like it's a masterpiece. And it obviously is because it's literally propelled pretty much the vampire genre, even though there were some books before Dracula on the in this genre, but none of them became so famous to the point that it became a cult classic and literally propelled the whole genre ahead. So like people got excited about it and more and more stories started coming up. I think that's the genius of Dracula. But at the same time, I think, in my opinion, I think we always must acknowledge the role of the story. We still can notice some things that maybe don't really personally work for us, and maybe just highlight, I don't know, certain things that maybe we're not happy about and the things we're happy about. I don't know. But I think it's tremendously important work of literature. But in my opinion, and I think because we discussed it before, I think Dani had some gripes with it as well. So
Yeah.
if you're like a
I
huge fan of Dracula, maybe you will hate us after this video. But we will try to explain our opinions.
yeah. I think I would say I appreciated the book more than I enjoyed it. I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars, and so
Okay.
I really enjoyed the first part of the book, especially. I think it's
That's my
got like,
favorite one as well.
yeah, it has some great suspense writing, but as I kept going, like it became more of like an intellectual enjoyment of like, oh, I see what this is doing. So I enjoyed it for like unlocking a piece of like the literary tradition for me. But it got, I think the storytelling got kind of repetitive and cumbersome towards the end.
What you
Um,
liked, what you disliked. You
yes.
go first, and I'll follow you.
Okay. What I liked the I already mentioned the suspense writing. I think in the first part, we have Jonathan as our sort of like he's like the main one writing journal entries that we're reading. And he's just a little stupider than the reader. People are like giving him crucifixes. They're like, oh my God, where are you going? Why are you going there? Don't go there. And he's like, oh, that's cute. These, oh, these superstitious
But do you think
Romanians.
like how would you behave in this sort of situation?
Well, that's the thing is like as the reader, you get to think like, oh yeah, I know it's a vampire,
Probably
but
you would be
like,
the same.
but the thing I feel like the part that I liked about this book was this theme of like reason. And so like Jonathan
Yeah.
Harker is like, be rational. Like
Yeah.
what's gonna happen to you, right? And so it's like that reason and rationality, that like Age of Enlightenment stuff against superstition and evil. And I think like what I really liked about this book is that Dracula is just evil, right? Like there's in the Coppola film, right? He's like you start adding sympathy to the monsters, and in this one, he's just evil. And
Yeah.
so I think that like that contrast between rationality and supernatural forces was one that I really enjoyed. And so I think that lesson, I would say like the core lesson from this book is like, oh, even in our Age of Enlightenment, there are like dark evil forces that we do not understand, and they are more dangerous. You're more vulnerable to them if you are not aware of them. And so be vigilant. And I think like that is like a cool lesson, like
Yeah.
in this age where you've got this like tension between like old world, new world. I think that's cool. I think it was just the execution in some places was lacking for me. And when I talk about execution, I mean there's a lot of repetition of plans, and like I feel like this book, if it were just trimmed down and it sort of kept more of the suspense going, I would have enjoyed it more. And then I don't the treatment of the women is like complicated, and I will talk about it a little bit more because it's like not super like cut and dry, like what's going on with the women. But there is this like
I would say,
patriarchal
in my
like
opinion, it's pretty obvious.
we can talk through it. There is definitely like patriarchal control over this woman that is like a running through line. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. Same question to you, Anna. What did you like? What did you not like?
I think, first of all, I would like to mention that it was such a surprising read for me because I had an absolutely different view of the book when I actually started this read, because I already mentioned that I read it twice in the past, but I read it when I was pretty much like a schoolgirl, and it happened in a very different culture as well when I used to live in Russia still. So it definitely had its impact on my perception of the book. I would say I have a similar experiences with Haruki Murakami. I'm not sure, Dani, have you ever read him?
Not yet.
I'm so afraid and terrified to read him now because when I used to read him in Russia, it was the same sort of time when I was maybe at school or maybe in the uni. I love him. And I think I still will really enjoy and appreciate his writing style and the world that he's creating, because there's lots of magical realism. And his writing is generally very beautiful and very addictive. But as in case with Dracula, for me personally, I'm actually afraid to read Haruki Murakami now after I read Dracula, because in my very warped view of Dracula before this read, it was one of my favorite books of all time. Well, this opinion is very different upon this reread, because I read it now. I grew into a very different person. I changed personally. We all grow and we change with time. Our personalities are changing, our views are changing, and it's totally normal and it's good because we're evolving as human beings. I think it's not normal if you just say remain the same person throughout your life. That will be very weird. But yes, unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did in the past. And I mentioned to Dani before, actually, the fun fact about it. I have 5 editions of Dracula in my collection. And now I'm thinking I should probably actually stop this obsession with buying this Dracula edition, because I realized, yeah, probably I don't really enjoy that as much as I thought. I just have like very beautiful 5 editions of the same book, and I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do with them now? All of them are stunning though. Probably I just keep them for the like collection sake because they're
Right.
stunning. Yeah, but like I don't think I'll be reading all of them. They're just like beautiful pieces of art on my shelf. Not here though. Two of them are here, but three in my previous place. Yeah, actually, like yeah, my library is split into parts. Like some books are here and some in a different place. But anyway, yes, I think all the things that Dani mentioned already are super relevant to my experience of this reading. I had exactly the same experience. I think it's very original and very important piece of literature. I really, really appreciated it. And I actually really enjoyed the writing style as well. Because it had some flowing quality, even though sometimes it was tedious, but I still really enjoyed the writing style. I don't know, it really, really worked for me. But the repetition aspect of it, I think really kills the enjoyment, especially like as Danny already mentioned, like in the second and the third part of the book, we start getting in this sort of stage when we're trying to track Dracula and to understand what's actually happening and potentially eliminate him. And all our characters are continuously checking their notes on the events. And it's like all these discussions are going on, and it's like it's super repetitive. And at some point, you just think like, "Come on, people, can you just actually act, like do something, and not just rewrite your diaries and keep like talking about it?" I found it super annoying at some point. Yeah, I think it just if I think like one fifth of the book could definitely be trimmed down. And I think it would make the book a much, much better experience, in my opinion. And the last thing, why I actually mentioned before already, the why I think it was such a surprising read for me, as Danny mentioned already, the sexist aspect of it. And why surprising? Because when I read it twice before, I never noticed it. It was like normal for me. But I'm just wondering myself, didn't I notice it before I was younger? Or didn't I notice it because I was living in Russia at the time? And obviously, my perception on certain things was very different just because the society where I was growing up was much more traditional. And like with Haruki Murakami books, um, the way the author is writing about women was totally okay for me. But now, for instance, when I read his books, I'm absolutely terrified, and I'm like, "You're just a creep." That's the feeling that his writing evokes in me. If, for instance, I read his books now, because I read one of his books recently and I was like, wow, that's not okay. That's not normal, even though I still really enjoy his writing. But I have a very different reaction to the sexism part of it. And it was exactly the same in Dracula. And I was thinking, since we have a very similar opinion on it, do you actually want to discuss what we didn't like there?
Yeah. Well, I can you start because I feel like we might have slightly different takes. Because
Okay.
I do think yes, I do think there's something misogynistic in there, but I can't tell. I think I'm still working through how the treatment interacts with the plot and the themes of
Yeah.
Dracula. So I would like it if you could start, and I will give my thoughts afterwards.
Yeah. I think it's not a very simple conversation, as because as Danny mentioned already, it's probably not very black and white, but at the same time, I still retain my opinion that the treatment of women by the author is pretty clear, even though there are some things that are sort of potentially trying to disguise it, and I'll try to explain myself what I mean by it. Because in this book, we have pretty much two male characters, Mina and her friend Lucy. I will not be going into plot details because we will probably discuss it in the spoiler section of this video. But the way these two young women interact with other people around them, with male characters in the story, and even among each other, it is it's just very weird for me because in many instances, I don't remember exactly the exact wording now. I didn't really like highlight it, and I don't have the book with me at this moment. But there are lots of sort of references to this idea generally in the book when these women are interacting between each other or with other people, that women are somehow inferior to men in their emotional and intellectual and physical capacities. It is very, I would say, prevalent in the book because every time, let's say, they talk to someone, it's you can see it, you can find it in quite a few places in the book. They're like, oh, men are, let's say, better at handling difficult situations. Men are generally intellectually superior. Men are better at handling difficult emotional situations. And even when women, these two young women are talking, like having conversations between each other, they're still referring to men as sort of superior beings. And it just gives this idea that the author and men in the book have a view of women as this gentle, pure flowers that need to be protected and taken care of, but they are less capable than men in pretty much all aspects of their life, emotional, intellectual, physical, everything. They're just not on the same level as men. And why I mentioned that it's sort of like trying to disguise this treatment, like for instance, in second and third part of the books, when they're trying to locate Dracula, Mina Harker is providing lots of sort of data to the story, and she is doing lots of this research of their written materials. She's rewriting it, and she's pretty much a secretary to this whole expedition, let's say. And she's doing lots of manual work for them, writing and writing and organizing the files. And even before that, she is taking care of her husband, and she sees her position as a woman, as a wife, is pretty much taking care of him. That's a paramount, this is of a paramount importance for her. That's basically the whole goal of her life since she married Jonathan. And even when she was writing these files for them, and they're praising her that, yes, Mina is doing such a great job, and the phrase that the way that they praise her, that she has a man's brain, that she's
Yeah.
not intellectually capable on her own, in her own way as a woman, but she's just surprisingly clever just because she potentially has a male brain. It's just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me, to be honest. I understand that many people had this sort of attitude in the past, but we will discuss maybe after you, for instance, will phrase your opinion. I'll discuss why I still not okay with it. And I think we still have to notice this sort of things and probably discuss it. That's my opinion. Even though like it is sort of like she's being praised for her achievements, but all these achievements are around her husband because she's trying to help him and them basically as a sidekick. But she didn't really achieve anything independently. And even when she's praised, she's being praised as having a male brain. That's my view, and I really didn't enjoy this aspect of the book.
Yes. Okay. So I think we don't necessarily disagree so much. I think it's just that my reaction to it is more so, and this is probably because I didn't have that experience of like reading it for the first time as a kid and then coming back and sort of having to recalibrate the book in my head. But and we gave it the same rating, but it for me, I see like the those like I man brain was like, oh God,
Yeah.
oh gosh, not this essentialist like stuff again.
Just don't give it to me.
But at the same time, I like recognize that for its time, it's like grappling with women's liberation in a way that was like, here's a version of women's liberation that like
Women's
still
liberation. You know, you mentioned it before. Sorry for interrupting you. You
yeah,
mentioned before the phrase, I'm just thinking about it, about new women, women of new age. That's another
yes.
thing. Oh my God. Women liberation.
Yes, so like Mina is supposed to be this like new woman in that she uses her brain. She's like she's received professional training for like typing, and she's like professional. She represents practicality. She's like a very she knows all the train timetables or whatever. And in fact, she is like sort of using these skills in service of her husband, right? But that does contrast to Lucy, who is more of a treated like a child. Like they're like, we have to protect her, don't keep her safe, don't let her know what's going on, she can't handle it. And I do think that Mina is an interesting version of this in that she does play a role, like she's a damsel in distress. They are both like damsels in distress, but she plays a role in her own rescue.
Yeah.
Um, and so like that's a little bit more progressive. But it's I for me it was just an interesting case study. That's part of like what sort of pulled me out and like you just I was doing this more intellectual like lens from a
Yeah.
remove.
I totally see it, but at the same time, on my part, I still feel that the view of the author were very clear. Because even like, for instance, sometimes some people say, okay, maybe it's not the view of the author, but the view of the character in the book. But that's
Mhm.
not the case here, because even female characters are having the same sort of rhetoric. When, for instance, Mina and Lucy are discussing something, and they're like, "Oh, like I don't remember the exact phrasing of it, but something like, yeah, man can handle it so much better, and yeah, we just need this like capable men in our life." Or like when they started criticizing this new women of this new wave, like new feminists, and saying like, "Oh, like ha ha ha, maybe these women in the future start proposing to their men." And it's like sort of said in derogatory way. So that's why I maintain that we pretty much can see the view of the author himself. And I already mentioned why I think it is still important, even though I do agree with Dani, and I usually give a discount to this older works of literature for this sort of things, because yes, obviously we grow as a society and views of the society are changing, ever evolving, and hopefully, not always the case, but hopefully we're getting better as a society and our views are getting more progressive. But why I still have issues in this case? Because I was thinking when I closed the book, when I was done with it, I was like, okay, that was a very interesting experience. I had a very different opinion of it now. But I was thinking, okay, shall I actually allow for this discount again? Because it's clearly views, at least of this person of the time, which was potentially supported by many people in the past and in his society. But after that, I was like, hold on. I recently read a collection of short stories by a Russian author, Konstantin Tolstoy, and I have reviewed the book on my channel. I am ashamed to admit that after I posted the review, one of you people who watched that review, maybe you're not watching this video, but anyway, this person highlighted the fact you can't find this book anymore. You can't buy it. So I unknowingly put a review of a book that you can't buy. Because I read this book in Russian because that's my first language, but apparently it's out of print in English. You can potentially find it, but it's extremely expensive. But anyway, Konstantin Tolstoy wrote a collection of short stories of supernatural and pretty much about vampires. There are four stories, and the first one is called Vampire. Um, and this collection of short stories was written, if I'm not mistaken, I might be lying now, so please correct me if I'm wrong. After this video, you can put it in the comment and shame me publicly. But it looks like it was written about 40 years before Dracula by Bram Stoker. So it's an older work of literature, and plus, it was written by a Russian author as well. I'm not sure exactly if the state of thinking about women in the society was very different in Europe and in Russia at the time. But I would say, like, nowadays, I would say Russia is more traditional than many countries in Europe. That's why it was so surprising for me, because when I read that collection, it it was such a revelation for me, and it was such a fresh experience because it wasn't sexist. Actually, that collection has quite interesting female characters, and yes, maybe they're overly flirty sometimes, but they are not seen as this, how can I put it? Best male friend, let's say, or something so much inferior that they need mental, physical, and emotional supervision in everything they're doing. They're pretty much independent. They have their own, I don't know, just capacity to do their own stuff, just control their lives. And sometimes they do quite despicable things in these books, but they have an agency of their lives. They're more interesting, and they just, you don't really get this view that women are somehow intellectually inferior to men, which was, as I said already, was so surprising because it's an older book by an author from a different country. And I don't really think that the views were so much different at the time between Europe and Russia, because uh, relationships were quite close at the time, I would say. And at the same time, I was thinking Pride and Prejudice, yes, was written by a woman, but it was written before Dracula as well. Much more progressive as well. That's why I was thinking, okay, we have a book written by a Russian male author before Dracula, and we have another book written by a female author before Dracula. None of them have the same views on women. Why do we give a discount to this book? Because it is clearly the opinion of the author. And that's why I was like, I'm not sure we should give it, because even though if we have this view that, okay, this was a prevalent view in the society in the time, but not everyone thought in the same way. It's the same like now, for instance, you can say like we tend to think in certain ways, but not that society is not one entity, it's not homogeneous, you know what I mean? People still have different views. And even if one view is more prevalent, there are lots of people that still will be thinking in a different way. We still can have differences in opinions, but here Bram Stoker is clearly expressing his opinion on women, and we are okay with it just because it was written some time ago, even though we have example of even older literature that doesn't really carry the same sort of views. That's why I was thinking maybe we should be a little bit more aware of this sort of things, maybe. I don't know. that was my thinking, and I'm still trying to process it. But I think I personally started getting a little bit stricter with my views of this sort of things after this experience because I realized that yes, maybe there are prevalent opinions, but not everyone have the same opinion. And you can get much better examples of it. What do you think about it? I don't know. Am I getting a little
Yeah.
bit like too
No, it's a lot to, it's
read
like
about it?
I think you make a really good point about even if this was like a prevalent view, it wasn't the only view. And it was a choice that Bram Stoker made to like emphasize that th like this contrast between these women and like the fact that his bright, shining, wonderful woman, Mina Harker, is like smart and practical and clever, but is still is acceptable, made acceptable in certain ways through her marriage and through her support of her marriage. And I think, yeah, I don't know if I'm like really giving it a pass. I just see it and I'm like, okay, we're
No, I
being,
get it. I get
yeah,
it. No, I sort of like I'm somewhere in between because I'm still battling with
yeah,
this new notion. Because I used to give it a pass, as you put
yeah,
it in the, I think it's yeah. But now I'm more reluctant. I'm like, But I'm not sure still, because
yeah,
there are lots of things that yes, like are quite prevalent in all the literature, but it could be probably said the same way about modern books. When in 100 years people will be reading and they're like, what the hell was just happening? Like, what these
yeah,
people are thinking about? Because society is evolving and maybe some of the views that we're holding now will be absolutely unacceptable and so weird and so out of the place in the future. But I still think we should be mindful of this sort of things because from my experience of reading this book, I'm actually so happy that I read it. And I realized that I grew as a person and I started noticing things that I didn't in the past, that my sensitivity to certain things that I believe are not okay developed. And I just feel like I grew as a person and the book showed it to me. And I want to be sensitive to these things because they're still not okay. New book, old book, they're not okay. Yes, you can acknowledge it and say, okay, I see it, but I'm sort of okay with it just because it's an older book. Yes, people used to think this way, but I think it's still important that you see it rather than when you don't notice it at all. That's how it happened to me in the past when I
yeah,
wasn't noticing it because it's an indication that it is okay for you, that you accept the same views.
right. So you just want that friction.
I want it because it
And
means
yeah,
that I don't support it personally now.
yeah. And that's just a great, I don't know. I love that you got this out of rereading it because I've also been trying to reread books more. I think it's
Mm.
hard to prioritize a reread. It is for me.
Yeah.
There's so many books to read, but yeah, it can be really worthwhile. So
I
I
feel
don't know.
like
I think it's so fascinating
for me, I
the
think
new
it's
things you
like
got.
project of growth because
Yeah,
you can see evolution of your personality, that you grew as a person and how you see things differently now. I think it's amazing, to be honest. I reread the Piranesi recently, and I'm so happy to admit that I still love it.
that one's also epistolary, right? I haven't read it yet. It's on
Yes,
my list.
I love it. It's so good. You should.
It's I trust it. Trust me, it's on the list.
It is so good. It's one of my favorite books of all time because after Dracula, I started doubting myself. And I was like, okay, let's read Piranesi. Still amazing. I was like, wow.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, you should read it. It's so beautiful. And it's very short as well. It's not dragging like Dracula. It's like
Okay, good.
about 250 maybe pages, something like that. It's very short.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. It's on the list. I'll get to it. I think I might have had it penciled. It's somewhere on my bingo board, unless it was for epistolarian, a new,
Maybe.
a new
Read it
spot.
anyway. It's so beautiful. It is so
Yeah,
good.
I want to talk about technology in this book.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I thought it was fascinating how much cutting edge technology
Oh
is
yeah.
referenced in this book.
But with some blunders as well. Like for instance, blood transfusion. Wow. I'm like,
But
what took you
listen,
blood?
at the time he was writing, that was the cutting edge knowledge. So yes, the blood transfusions, especially. So when Lucy, this is the spoiler part, when Lucy is really struggling physically, and they know that she's lost a lot of blood, but they're like, "Where's the blood? I don't know. There's no blood or here. Where'd the blood go?" And so all of her suitors are donating blood, transfusing blood. And this was written a few years before blood types were discovered. So the way it's acting, like um, ideologically, metaphorically, it's just that like you need, a good, strong man. And that's your best
And
because
you'll be
obviously
okay.
obviously they knew that this was a risky procedure and that it like didn't work some of the time. So this was like a last chance procedure that they're doing. But there is a lot of like, oh yes, good blood. You have good blood. You're big and strong and honorable, and that makes you a good candidate to donate blood. But so there's the blood transfusions, there's the shorthand and the typewriting. Um, the typewriter was pretty new. I think Mina also has like a traveling typewriter, which is
And what's
like,
the name of that thing that John, the uh
oh, the phonograph,
phonograph. So
the
they
wax
could
cylinder
literally
that you
like
record on.
record
Yeah,
record the voice as well, which was pretty
yeah.
cool at the time. Yeah.
And so I don't know. To me, it reminded me, if I think about it, it reminds me of like a modern like mystery thriller where I don't know, they're like checking your smartwatch for your location or like checking like, oh, your heart rate was really high at this time. And so it's like, they're just sort of injecting some. And I think that plays into the themes of like science, reason,
Yeah.
and superstition. And I think it's interesting that Dr. Van Helsing,
Yeah.
um, who is our doctor, but also our cult doctor. So he's the blend of the science and the superstition, and he applies both methods when he's trying to save these women.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Oh, another thing, I'm not sure, like we discussed the sort of sexist part of the book,
Hmm.
but I was thinking, could be interesting to mention another, um, let's say, part of the book that could be problematic as well. Because I was just thinking about it. Because Dracula can be seen not only as a supernatural, let's say, horror story, as this vampire is attacking people and trying to kill them, suck their blood, but it can be seen as for the lens of fear of others. Because the Dracula, Count Dracula, is coming from a foreign country and coming to England with its foreign influence and attacking pure British women, which is again chauvinistic and at the same time racist part of it, because British women are seen as something pure and untouchable, and they are valued on their youth and purity, which is indicated many times in the books. But this foreign count is coming for with his foreign influences and trying to corrupt them. Um, I would say even like in sexual ways, because they stop being these pure beings. There are some descriptions of what happening as well. Even though I would say the book itself is very prudish, I would put it this way, because it really avoids discussion of sexuality. And I would say the only sexy moment we have in the book is actually between Jonathan and some vampire women actually in the land of Dracula again. Even if we see that sexuality is allowed, is actually for the women of other country, not British, because British women supposed to remain pure. So I think it's very interesting sort of blend of Puritanism, this like sexism and how women, especially British women, are viewed, being this young and pure and just creatures that needs to be protected at all cost. And this foreign dark, corrupting influence that comes to Britain and tries to corrupt our people and especially women. I think that's another thing actually like which is very interesting because I I was discussing it when I was reading Sherlock Holmes first time because I read the Sherlock Holmes recently first time, first two books. And it's like this prevailing fear of others, like this dark influence of foreigners on British culture and on British people because everything corrupted was coming from foreigners there as well, which was pretty similar in Dracula. I
Yeah.
would say, in my opinion, that's how I felt.
And it's interesting because Britain is at the height of its colonial like
Yes,
superpowers right now, right? So like
expansion.
yeah, so the reverse is fear
Yeah,
inducing, the foreign element
but all the bad
coming
things are happening outside.
in.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it definitely the fact that the women are targeted and I feel like the women represented like they are like the stability of of the nation. Like they're not just the homemakers, but like if the nation is a home, they are
Yeah.
like making the nation what it is and raising the children. And I think that's why we're a spoiler territory. Like when Lucy gets turned and she targets children, she kind of turns into this sort of like seductress. She's sort of
Yeah.
described seductively, but she's
Voluptuous
also
figure, and they're repulsed by her. Oh
yeah, so she's like the anti-bride and the
yeah,
anti-mother. And like that's very that contrast is obviously
yeah,
really
yeah,
important.
yeah. It's a very interesting, like let's say, example of how women and foreign influence was seen at the time generally. It's
Yeah.
very like telling.
So on the subject of fear of foreignness, I was also thinking about Van Helsing
Yeah,
related to that because he's obviously foreign and I guess it like to me he like played this role of in a way like uniting new world, world, like in his approach. I guess it maybe it's also like foreignness is also like not homogenous.
no, I agree because in case of Van Helsing, even though he's a foreigner, but to put it in a nicer way, I'm not sure how can you even put it in a nicer way, but he's from a, let's say, maybe civilized part of Europe as how it was seen at the time. So
Yeah.
he's sort of like on
And he
equal
has like 8
almost
different
part.
degrees.
He's
Yes.
accepted. He's in
He
the
can
club.
he can get back and forth in 24 hours, which I don't know, maybe that's another piece of
Yeah.
technology that's like, oh, look how fast we can travel. So, Bram Stoker's Dracula, I thought was very interesting that it was called Bram Stoker's Dracula because it like makes it sound like it's super authentic. It's like a super authentic representation. And like maybe in the sense that compared to Nosferatu, like, oh, the characters are named the same way and it's got all the same characters, but the themes seem totally different. I guess, do you want to give an overview? What do you like about this movie? What do you not like? And then I can give the same.
I don't know. I think I'm just like a bit biased again because I watched Coppola's movies so many times, as already mentioned, probably like around 10 times. It's just so ingrained in my lore of Dracula generally. It's just like, I don't know, that's how I remember it mostly. Not even
Yeah.
by the book, but by the movie. Even though it's like it's absolutely different from the book. Yes, you get the same characters and certain, I would say the main plot is the same, but the themes and how the story is told is so twisted. I loved it because it's just beautiful. I think the story is beautiful. And yes, you mentioned that there is a interesting attempt at humanizing Dracula because he's being given a background and he's not so scary anymore because we can understand him better. I would say if we compare Dracula by Coppola and Nosferatu, Dracula is a love story and Nosferatu is a horror movie. That's sad. It's just that Dracula is so twisted, the message and the background of the story itself. Like, because I would say in the original book, there is no background to Dracula. He's just there and he's evil. That's it. We don't really have much.
Yeah, I think there's an allusion to he probably fought
Not
the
much. That
Turks.
he was a count,
Yeah.
he was like the super um influential man, and he was very let's say, yes, influential and rich and popular at the time when he was still a living man. But the movie itself, the Dracula movie, created a absolutely different background to him. And this background is driving the story, I would say, not the what's happening with the Dracula, but genuinely that background is the main driver for the movie. And to be honest, I liked it because it created this motivation, like an extra motivation, not just evil for the sake of evil, but it's something else. And yes, it's humanizing him, but at the same time making him more interesting. And I think his actor play, the Dracula, is amazing. I really like the actor.
Gary
Um,
Oldman.
yes, I love him. I think Mina was splendid. I loved Mina. Um, I I will be hated after this video because I've had very unpopular opinion about Keanu Reeves because I like him because I think it's mostly because there is this image created around him of him being a very nice person generally. But in terms of his acting abilities, I think he's not the greatest.
I I don't think that's an unpopular opinion when it comes to this movie. Like when I was searching this movie
In
after I
general, about him, general, not only about this movie, he's just not a great actor.
that's
But he has such a nice personality, you know, he's like a bit awkward and like nice looking. He's just like this nice guy. That's why
yeah.
people like him, but he's not a great actor. Yes, Jonathan Harker is not a great character.
Okay. I I don't know. I don't want to interrupt you, but I will say one of my biggest disappointments with this movie was I mean, I think in Dracula, I really liked Mina and Jonathan's relationship for the most part. Like
Yeah,
they kept me invested. They're like just little cinnamon buns. I loved that they loved each other so much. And so having Jonathan Harker be one, just a total loser. and two, and two, like when you add this plot where Mina is like Dracula's reincarnated lover, and so like he's like his by rights, and like it's a,
yeah.
I think like it just sort of twisted the themes. I was just like, what's happening? But I came to this where like I read it and I watched it for the first time at the same time. I did think like the Vlad the Impaler ish background where they added more of like he lost his wife when he was off fighting the Turks, and
Mm.
then he's angry at God, and he's so I like think that that is all like really fascinating, but then the way it ended up being handled with the Mina plot, I didn't love it. I like my Dracula as a monster and just a pure representation of
Mm.
evil, even if that means it's not as modern a story. I think the trauma, it should be focused on the victims of Dracula
Yeah.
and not on Dracula.
Yeah.
And that's where like Nosferatu like sort of does an approach that seems more traditional to the book, in my opinion. But neither of them are super. I don't think like a really one-to-one Dracula adaptation exists.
No, no, I don't think it exists. Maybe some older, because we haven't watched everything, because there are quite a number of adaptations, but not this ones. If you want to learn the actual stories, these books are not sorry, not these movies are not what you need to seek. Just read the book, because
Yeah,
these are very different stories. I would say Nosferatu is definitely closer to the canon,
yeah,
but still, I mean, it's closer to the canon, I would say, in the feel of it. It's actually a horror story, and he's just an evil being. But there are still some changes in the story that, if you want to actually know the original, you'll have to read the book, I'm afraid.
yeah. Because it's not the Nosferatu adaptation is not only an adaptation of Dracula, it's like an adaptation of the original Nosferatu, which changed things on purpose to avoid copyright and having to pay royalties. And then anything that I guess going back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, I'm glad I watched it. I just think I was kind of, I had an initial like reaction of upset
I just
plot.
I just think like it is beautiful. It's just like a
Yes.
piece of art. The cinematics and like all the like I don't know, it's so magical to me. It's just a very beautiful movie, and that's why I really like it. But another aspect I wanted to point out, and I know we already discussed it, I find it super ironic because I would say the book is pretty much prudish. It is so, it has a very strong aversion to sexuality. But both of these movies are much more explicit. If you want some sexy time in your Dracula, both of these movies will provide you, um, yes,
Yes.
with this opportunity.
Yes.
And I find it so ironic because like the original was so strict on sexuality, was really trying to avoid it and was portraying sexuality as something almost like evil, like
Yeah, especially
force of
sexuality
corruption.
outside of your marriage, right? Like I think like there's
Notice, even Mina and Jonathan's relationship, even when they got married, there is not even mentioning of anything happening between them. It's just so hush-hush. It's like even in relationship in like lawful marriage, there is no discussion of sexuality. They're almost like sexless marriage and they just support and respect each other. Let's say we have nothing really between them, like at least nothing in the book. But
no.
every time sexuality is mentioned in the book, it is associated with impurity and evil. But and that's why I find it so ironic because the original was so prudish and we have interesting sexy time in both of the movies.
Yeah.
Maybe just attract modern readers,
Yeah, I think
but it
that
just
there's
gives very
this
different feel to it.
I think for a modern audience, there's this temptation to like really impose the sexual repression reading on it because just the mores are different.
Yeah.
And and so I think both of the movies do that to some extent where like, I think vampires, even in Dracula, like when we see it with Jonathan and the women in the beginning, um, they represent temptation, and like
Yeah.
sexuality is like temptation to sin. And like that's kind of what's going on here in different ways.
Much deeper, I would say, because in the book it's like literally like she kissed his wrist. I think that's the most like
Yeah.
the sexiest part of it. But in the movie, you really go to
Yeah, there's extended cuts
yeah,
of, yeah, sexy scenes and moaning. I did think both of the movies were beautiful, beautifully
yeah,
rendered. Like the visuals were just stunning. And then I think it's also like Bram Stoker's Dracula like has like this interesting angle that is maybe less easy to appreciate when I'm watching it 30 years after it was created. But like it has all these in-camera special effects, like not
mm,
not really any CGI. I also think, yeah, Dracula is great in both, or Count Orlok versus like Gary Oldman's versus Bill Skarsgård's Count Orlok. I just thought they were like both so interestingly created, even though um Dracula like has this, he had like several different modes. He's like kind of old and decrepit, and then
yeah,
also young and seductive. So you
yeah.
have like those different modes. And then Count Orlok is just repulsive,
Just ugly, yeah.
just
He's
nasty,
evil. Yes.
evil. But I thought really well rendered. Gross. There's so much like dripping. There's a lot of like goop in
That's
those
it's just like
shots.
a horror, yeah. It's more like proper horror
Yeah.
movie, yeah. That's why like when I was watching it, I was like half of the time just trying
Like,
to close my eyes. Yeah, because I'm afraid I can't watch horror movies, but I was so excited because it's Dracula. Come on, I need to watch it. And
yeah.
to be honest, I was a bit scared. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. I'm not usually a big horror watcher. I think I can like this gothic kind of horror I can handle a little bit more than
Mm,
stuff that's really slasher. I don't know how much else I have to say about like Nosferatu in particular. It was beautiful. I think it really did also portray these women being treated as, you know, innocent angels, like we know better.
yeah,
Oh, oh, she's having you know, an event again. Quick, give her the
yeah.
chloroform, whatever it
Hysterical.
is. And where yeah, it's like this really patriarchal system over them, but I didn't feel like it was portrayed in any sort of way where like that is a good state of being. It was
Yeah.
just portraying it.
I
And
think like
that was like another element of the horror was that, this woman feels so much shame and that she can't really
yeah.
help herself. And um, yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like probably Nosferatu, even though I totally agree with you, it's actually, I think Nosferatu is generally more in line with the original um book in terms of the feel of it, even though there are some changes, definitely. But it's more true to the original, I would say.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I feel maybe I'm wrong, but I felt by the end of it, they were really trying to give more agency to Mina and they were trying to rectify the sexist view of it. So she was trying to get in control of her destiny, of her life. But at the same time, even though they were trying to do that, I personally think they still failed it.
Right.
Because if they really wanted to rectify it, and make it more, let's say, feministic, and she actually took agency of her life. She shouldn't have died in the end. She still
Sacrifice. Yeah.
sacrificed herself, still. She's still sacrificial lamb, and then even though she's chosen it, but again, why did she choose it to save others? So it's like there was an attempt, but I think it would be much stronger message, in my opinion, if she actually managed to kill him and survive.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. The ending is tragic.
Yeah, I'm
And
like, what?
I hope people read it as tragic, like
Yeah.
uh, um but yeah, that is not as because in the end she like sacrificed herself to like maintain order, and which is not really fixing the problem in the order
Yeah.
of the society. It's just getting rid of the disorder, which includes a woman who was abused and shamed, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think like both of the movies are interesting in their own way. They're just very, very different.
Yeah. So
And
read the book and watch the movies to get
yeah,
the
it's very eye-opening, honestly, because you literally can see the same story from different angles and
yeah,
analyze it. It's so such a weird and interesting experience. I don't
yeah.
know. I really liked it.
Yeah. No, I thank you so much for recommending this project to me because I think I love thinking about adaptations just from the get-go, and this this was really generative. Like these are so different in their approaches, and I don't know. I think like Dracula is just, it's been reinvented so many times. Maybe we need more non-Dracula vampire. So maybe we do need to branch out a
Discuss
little
it
bit.
with you. We discussed it with you. Do you remember? There is a new Dracula movie coming out, Dracula Love
Yes,
Story, which I think will be carbon copy of the
Coppola.
Coppola's movie. I think it's just like modern reincarnation of the same sort of story because judging by the trailer, it's literally the same sort of like love story with the same background as in Coppola's movie. And we
Yeah,
actually were thinking when we were like starting this project, we were thinking maybe let's wait for that movie, but we realized that it's coming out somewhere like in October, November. I was like, no, we're not gonna wait for it. It's just like,
well, yeah, maybe we can circle back, or well, I'll at
yes,
least definitely
yeah,
message you
but
about it. But yeah, that's maybe let's not wait. I am curious to see. It does. The trailer did
I will
look
watch it.
very,
I will
yeah,
watch it, but I think it will be regurgitating of Coppola's movie just because
yeah,
it's so popular. It's like I think Coppola's version of Dracula really cemented in society's like psyche. Like that's how majority of people actually think of the story, even though it's so different from the original. And that's
yeah,
why I think they're like, okay, let's make it just prettier, like new version.
yeah. Curious, yeah, curious to see how that turns out.
I'll be watching it for sure. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Before we sign off, Anna, do you have any recommendations for other reading?
Yes.
Yes.
I personally have two recommendations, and one of them I already mentioned. Good luck, people, finding this book, but if you manage to find, I would really recommend this collection of short stories of supernatural by sorry, no, Konstantin Tolstoy, a Russian author. It was written before Dracula. It is so cool. Literally, it's like it's so original. I was so surprised. In my opinion, oh, I'm just telling some blasphemous things, but I enjoy it more than Dracula. Um, Give it a go if you manage to find it, maybe somewhere online, I don't know. But it is available in Russian. I don't know. If you're a Russian speaker, pick up that short story collection. It's really, really worth it. I think, in my opinion, it's better than Dracula. And another thing, if you want some vampire stories, but more towards scientific part, because as Dani already mentioned, Dracula has some attempts of rationalizing all this situation. But if you want sci-fi about Dracula, sorry, vampires, I would say I Am Legend. I think it was written in 50s, 1950s, if I'm not mistaken. It has a very scientific approach to vampires. And yes, it explains vampires in a very scientific way. I really enjoyed it. It has its sexist ways as well. Be be mindful of it. Yeah, I was thinking like to make a video of it or not, we will see. But yes, there are some interesting things that I didn't buy personally myself, but the book in general is great, actually. I really, really enjoy it. By the way, if you watch the movie I'm Legend with Will Smith, the ending is very different from the book, and I actually personally like the ending of the book better. So if you know the movie, still can read the book because the ending is very different, and maybe you'll appreciate it more. That's my recommendations.
I did watch the movie I Am Legend when it came out, but I don't remember it super well, and I'm definitely interested in reading the
Yeah, I
book.
watched it a long time
Yeah.
ago as well, but the ending is very different.
Yeah.
And the vampires are very different as well. And the character is very different, even though it's sort of like the same story, but the feel is different and the ending is different. So I think you still can give it a try with the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for those recommendations. I have a short story I want to recommend, which is in English, it's called The Mysterious Stranger. It was translated from German, and it's a short story that predates, like you were talking about, predates Dracula by at least a couple decades.
Mm.
And it was written by, apparently in the English speaking world, we lost who the author was. That we only found out like in the last 10 years. It's Karl von Wachsmann, which is a
Okay.
German author. And it is like very reminiscent of Dracula. Obviously, it predates Dracula, but I think Bram Stoker probably knew about this short story and picked some elements from it because it is a family that's traveling to their castle in I think it might be Romania. And they get caught by wolves, and then there's a vampire that can control the wolves, which comes up with Dracula. And crucially, I think like what makes this really interesting is that the female lead character has a female best friend, and they like respond to this vampire character very differently. And it reminded me of the Mina Lucy dynamic that like we have two very opposite female best friends sort of taking the center of the story. And I thought that was like very fascinating. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it's in any of Stoker's notes and
Yeah.
readings, but it was a great short story. Shouldn't take that long to read. So yeah.
Yeah, you see, we're recommending much shorter stories for you. If you want to read something about vampires, maybe less
Yeah.
dragging.
Well, thank you so much, Anna, for recommending
Thank you,
this.
Dani.
And thanks for talking with me about it, and sharing your very carefully laid out criticism.
Not so quick, carefully, but yes. It was a very cool project. Thank you very much for agreeing to do together. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.